Right now, we want to move on to our nation and how we can help Nigeria solve their problems or our problems using big data. You know, when you're a kid and your mother sends you to the market and she writes a list of items for you to buy, she usually, writes those. She writes the list based on the number of items that she would be needing for the number of people in the family. Right? And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we're facing as a nation. We do not have accurate data so that the governments, the Federal Ministry of Budget and Planning, can use that particular data to plan for the entire nation. We now have to depend on bodies like the United Nations or the International Monetary Funds, the IMF, to estimate data. It is so embarrassing that the last time we had a census in this country was in 2006. 17 years later, we still don't have accurate data to determine how many people that we need to cater for as a nation. So to discuss this particular problem and to prefer a solution on how we can solve Nigeria's problem using big data is a political data analyst.
Thank you.
Adeshokbe Hastrop, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm happy to be here. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hey, we're so happy to have you. So let's just dive straight into it. Okay. Why is it so hard to collect data in Nigeria?
In Nigeria, it's simple and it's complex. Because one thing data does is that it prefers simplicity, specificity. It brings understanding to anything. So I think the real question is not about why is it so difficult to get data. We can spend money to do anything we want to do. It's about why is it that we don't behave like we need data? Why is it that we just assume things, we wing things along like, okay, people are suffering, we know what to do, and then we just go. And then you find out that in the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years, the same issues persist. Nothing has changed. You give palliative 8 years ago, nothing changed. We are coming with new set of palliatives, nothing will change. So the real truth here is data prefers clarity. And in a nation where there is, a bit of corruption and shadiness,
all right,
something like that.
All right, we were having conversations around why it's so difficult to collect data, and just so that I'm very direct, why I don't know if we have any sort of system that tells us the number of unemployed people, the number of employed people, the age demography, and all of those things. So it's easier for the government to plan specifically for the demography.
Okay, as I was saying, we have the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics. And I said something before we went on a break that data is not hard. It's easy to get if we want it. But as I said, data brings simplicity, brings clarity, brings specificity. And data is like a mirror. So the truth here is, would you want data that everybody can see, can measure, can say, oh, we are not getting this right, let us move in this direction? So I used to say, any serious government, any serious people would invest in data. So if you come with solutions, oh, we want to quickly do this, without data, it means you are just winging it. You're just wanting to see how it will go. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Or sometimes it worsens it. And it's just a matter of time before you know. But data helps us to know where we were, so that we will know where we are going to. So why is it difficult? I think it's for those in authority to be able to answer that question. We saw how the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics said, oh, we are not about 30-something% unemployed, we are now 2-3%, yes, equal to the UK. How does that work? I mean, how do we use that for development? I mean, how?
So if I could recall properly, I think how they got to that conclusion was, because of the amount of money for the poverty level, sort of changed.
Okay.
It just automatically changed the statistics, but in reality, we know that is not necessarily the case.
Okay.
And that leads me to the next question.
Okay.
For bodies that have been entrusted with, having such data to plan for the people, when such things happen and they said, oh, we're no longer 30-something%, we're now at 2% unemployed, how does this impact the nation, really?
Psychologically, this leads to a level of distrust. people really don't trust institutions of government in the first place. They don't trust government. And it's a global thing. I'm not talking of a Nigerian thing. You go and check the approval ratings of the Supreme Court in the US. It's really low. Check the approval ratings of the Congress in the US. It's really low. People don't trust institutions. So the burden is on the government to always do more to ensure that the people say, and this thing really affects them and they really want to get it right. So I believe that getting credible data, even by the government, would help move things forward, especially with development. How do we appropriate things without data? How do we even budget without data? You mentioned in the opening about the census since 2006. But now I think we are working with projections, almost 200 million. Some will say, we will be 220 very soon. Some people are even arguing we are not even up to 200 million. How do we plan with that? You know, we did some work politically, data, during these last elections. And we went to places that don't even have mobile networks. We went to places and we were able to hear things, see things. It was, we even had recordings of this, data that has context. So the truth here is, we are not serious if we are not working with data. That's just it.
So what can we leverage on? At the top of my head, I would think technology, but how can we leverage on things like technology and others to improve? Because we're trying to be solution driven here.
Yeah,
so what can the governments do, or what can the people at the helm of affairs do to actually improve this data collection?
Okay, I'm happy we have a very tech-friendly Minister of ICT, and I want to believe that his hands are full because I follow his page a lot, and I see that he's always busy doing things. But this is what I would recommend. I know there's this overflogging of technology, and I'm sure you're tired of bringing that up, talking about solutions. But practically, I've seen it work. There are people who collect data, and I realize that in some of those data, there's always a lot of compromise because technology is not involved. But there's a way you can bring technology into collation of data. And I think we have a lot of data sources already. We have the NIN, the BVN, we have. And trust me, you are talking of census, you can get to almost a near accurate figure looking at what we have first in the database. But Nigerians don't even publicly know what we have. We hear the government say we're going to harmonize. Then it's time to do that. Let the minister, I think it's under him now, the NIMC. It's under the Ministry of ICT. So I'm sure that's one of the things they should be looking at to begin to fetch data and say, okay, this is how we are going to plan. So, firstly, we use technology to collate, we use it to process, we use it to store. I'm sure a lot of people have heard cloud storage and all that. We use it to store, and we also use it to report data. And when we do that, there will be some element of trust beginning to creep in. And I used to say this, if the people are not involved in the data collection process, meaning they can't see what you're doing, you just come to report figures, sometimes there's going to be a very high level of distrust. So involve the people. Let it be data by the people, for the people, the way democracy sounds.
Yeah, I understand. I totally understand. I'm also very curious as to what sectors would be most impacted by inaccurate data.
Sectors, number one, you're looking at the economic sector. Like, if there is no good data for the economy, investors, I know there are a lot of private entities trying to do one or two things, I'm not going to mention names, for the private sector, especially with the economy. Secondly, even with the economy, you're talking of government policies. We're talking of security. We're talking of immigration. We're talking of agriculture. Some people argue, no, it's this state that does it the most. No, it's this state that does. And another thing I'm going to talk about. Maybe in Nigeria, we're a bit poor on communication. Whatever data we have, let us make sure we put it out there. Let the layman see it. Don't let it be people like us who know how to speak English that then we know how to access it. Let everybody know where we are. You understand? We have what we call consumer production, how much consumers spend every month. You have that data in the US every month. Every month. And the moment the figure is coming up or going down, they are already able to project what the economy is saying. Oh, consumer spending is high. They know. So, like real estate now, Lukman just left here now, and when you look at real estate, the real estate sector, you have a very, very robust data of how much people are spending, of how much people will spend, of the taste people will have. So the real question here is, how do we make sure we can implement these things into the sectors? Let's start with one sector. Let's focus on the economy. That is what is happening in Nigeria right now. Let's focus on the economy. Let's get it right. Let's get the data right. And I believe from there, we can pick it into other sectors.
Okay, and even the existing data that we have, some people have argued that it's not entirely accurate. There's been so many discrepancies, and it's even played a major role in the last election where people are having different figures. And like I said, we try as much as possible not necessarily to get political, so to say, but also we can't ignore some of the incidences that have happened in this country that had to do with data.
Yes.
One of, in fact, the major issue with the last election, even in the courts, was data. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, I'm going to give a very short but elaborate response to that.
Yeah.
This is it. Data, when you collect data, and I'm speaking very practically now, you have variables involved. And the lower the variables involved, the more accurate your data can be. I talked about data giving you some level of specificity.
Yeah.
But that specificity will come from a place where the variables are not so many. But in a country like Nigeria, the variables are more. So someone can go out there, honestly, take data. Honestly, without any agenda, report data. Data is not always embraced globally. If you go to the US, Republicans say, oh, no, we don't agree with that. Democrats will say, oh, we love it. And then when the tables turn, that's the way data is. But at the end of the day, most of the time, it always happens. Now, let me give you a very short instance. Donald Trump, the prediction that Hillary Clinton was going to win. Donald Trump himself was a load of variable. So that prediction failed. But when he was in office for about 4 years, he was about to run again. They were able to predict easily that Biden was going to get him out. But in Nigeria, too many variables. And these variables revolve around human beings. During election days, okay, we took data in Imo State now. Some places elections did not hold. Results were declared. How do data capture that? It is impossible. So I wouldn't say data was wrong or data was right. Some might have done it with agenda, some might have done it innocently. But these variables must be well taken care of. And if there is any data company listening, you must make sure that you can work with these variables to be able to project who the next governor of that place will be, who the next this will be, who the next that will be. And I believe data can help us get there.
All right, this has been such a very deep conversation, and
thank you.
It's been beautiful, but I'm also just wondering how we can break it down to the common man, because we're talking variables, we're talking statistics, and how big the variable is. You know what I'm talking about.
I know.
So, like, to the layman, right? How can you enlighten the layman on the importance of data and how it affects him or her?
Okay, I'm going to give you another practical response. We took data in Lagos State, and we had people in almost every local government taking data. Private data, not sponsored by anyone. Data we collected and we processed, we did everything, and we reported. And in taking that data, we met people on the street, and we had recordings of them because we wanted the data to be so solid that if anybody challenges it, we have recordings of everybody we spoke to. But we found out that some people don't understand why. They say, that you have, they don't really. So I think your question is really appreciated. The truth here is, the level of distrust in government does not make people even want to talk. Now, we asked the question. It was a political question. What do you think? What do you think? Oh, I'm not ready. So the real thing here is, I want whoever is listening to me, either you're literate or you're illiterate or you're semi-literate, I want you to understand that when you talk to the people who really need the data, you help them to make informed choices, even if it's the government.
All right.
even if it's the government. So I think that's the way to go.
Thank you so very much for speaking with us.
Thank you very much.
And I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Yes.